Commander Vexthul stood on the bridge of the massive warship called Eternal Dominion. He was 12 feet tall with thick armor covering his entire body. His red eyes looked at the planet below as it burned. Another world had fallen to the Zephyrian Empire. This made it the third planet they had conquered this month. The Zephyrians were the strongest fighters in the galaxy. They had ruled space for over 3,000 years. No one could stop them. Their ships were bigger than cities. Their weapons could destroy moons. Their soldiers never lost a battle. Vexthul touched a button on his control panel. The screen showed him other Zephyrian fleets across the galaxy. Each fleet was destroying or taking over new worlds. The sight made him happy. Fear was the best way to control others. On the planet below, the local people ran and screamed. Their weapons could not even scratch Zephyrian armor. Their ships exploded the moment they tried to fight back. It was always the same story. Every species in the galaxy knew one simple truth. You could not win against the Zephyrians. Far away on the other side of the galaxy, Ambassador Krelnos walked into the Galactic Council building. He was also a Zephyrian, but he used words instead of weapons. The Great Hall was full of representatives from hundreds of different species. All of them looked scared when they saw him coming. Krelnos stepped up to the speaking platform. His voice was deep and frightening. The Zephyrian Empire demands tribute from 3 more star systems, he said. You have 1 month to send us 50% of all your resources. If you refuse, we will take everything by force. The council members looked at each other with fear in their eyes. The small blue aliens from Kepler Prime started to cry. The tall, thin creatures from the Vega system shook with terror. No one dared to say no to the Zephyrians. What if we cannot pay so much? Asked a brave representative from the Centauri colonies. Krelnos smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Then you will see what happened to the Altair system last year. We turned their 3 planets into space dust. Their billions of people are now dead. Choose wisely. The council meeting ended quickly after that. Every species agreed to pay the tribute. They had no choice. The Zephyrian Empire had the biggest military force anyone had ever seen. Their technology was so advanced that other species looked like children playing with toys. Back on his flagship, Commander Vexthul received a message from his scouts. Sir, we found something strange at the edge of our territory, reported Scout Captain Thexmore. There are some unknown ships moving toward our space. Vexthul looked at the data on his screen. The ships were small and looked very basic. Their hulls were made of simple metal. They used chemical fuel instead of proper energy systems. Their weapons appeared to be throwing pieces of metal at high speed. How many ships? Vexthul asked. Only 12, sir. They are very small compared to our vessels. Each one is about the size of our smallest scout ship. Vexthul laughed. Probably some new species that does not know about us yet. Send a patrol to capture them. We can use them as slaves or sell them to the mining companies. Yes, sir. What should we do if they resist? Destroy them quickly. We do not have time to waste on such weak creatures. The unknown ships belonged to a species that called themselves humans. They came from a planet called Earth in a small solar system that no one had noticed before. The lead ship was commanded by Captain Jake Murphy, a man with brown hair and serious blue eyes. Jake stood on his ship's bridge looking at the star maps. His crew had been traveling for 6 months since leaving Earth. They were the first humans to travel this far into space. Their mission was simple: explore new worlds and make contact with alien life. Captain, I am picking up some strange signals, said Lieutenant Lisa Chang from her communication station. She was a young woman with black hair who was very good with computer systems. What kind of signals? Jake asked. Jake, they sound like voices, but the language is nothing like anything from Earth. The computer is trying to translate, but it is having trouble. Jake walked over to look at her screen. The signals were coming from many different directions. Some sounded like normal conversations. Others sounded like military orders. All of them were in languages that humans had never heard before. It looks like this part of space has a lot of intelligent life, Jake said. That is exactly what we hoped to find. Engineer Amy Davis looked up from her workstation. She was a tall woman with red hair who kept all the ship's systems running. Captain, I am also detecting some very powerful energy sources moving in our direction. They are still far away, but they are definitely heading toward us. Alien ships? Jake asked. That would be my guess. And they are much bigger than anything we have ever built. Jake felt excited and nervous at the same time. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for. First contact with alien intelligence. He had dreamed about this day since he was a child. All ships, this is Captain Murphy, he said into his communication system. We may be about to meet. Our first aliens, remember your training, be peaceful but stay alert. We represent all of humanity out here. The other 11 human ships responded that they understood. Each ship had a crew of about 50 people. They were scientists, engineers, soldiers, and explorers. All of them had volunteered for this dangerous mission to the stars. None of them knew they were about to enter the territory of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire had destroyed entire civilizations. They had never been defeated in battle. They treated other species like animals to be controlled or eliminated, but the humans were different from every other species the Zephyrians had ever met. Humans had something that the galaxy had not seen for a very long time. They had the ability to think in new ways. They could adapt and change their tactics. They could work together without fear controlling them. The stage was set for a meeting that would change the entire galaxy. The strongest military force ever created was about to encounter a species that fought with their minds instead of just their weapons. Neither side knew what was coming, but the universe was about to learn an important lesson about the difference between being strong and being smart. The first meeting between humans and Zephyrians happened near a small mining colony called Outpost 7. Captain Jake Murphy was leading his 12 ships through what he thought was empty space. He had no idea they were crossing into Zephyrian territory. Commander Vexthul had sent 6 of his patrol ships to investigate the unknown vessels. Each Zephyrian ship was 10 times bigger than the largest human ship. Their weapons could destroy a city with one shot. Their shields had never been broken by any enemy in 3,000 years. Lieutenant Lisa Chang was the first to spot the alien ships on her sensors. Captain, I have 6 large objects approaching us fast, she said. They are definitely not natural formations. Jake looked at the main screen as the Zephyrian ships came into view. They were huge and covered in armor. Strange symbols glowed along their hulls. Energy weapons pointed in every direction like the spines of a dangerous animal. This is it, people, Jake said to his crew. Our first contact with alien intelligence. Lisa, try to send them a peaceful greeting. Use all frequencies. Lisa worked quickly at her station. She sent out messages in mathematics, music, and simple pictures. These were the methods that Earth scientists had planned for making contact with aliens. The messages said that humans came in peace and wanted to be friends. On the lead Zephyrian ship, Scout Captain Thexmore looked at the incoming signals with confusion. No species had ever tried to communicate with them before. They usually just begged for mercy or started shooting immediately. Commander Vexthul, the unknown ships are sending us some kind of transmission, Thexmore reported over the communication system. What do they want? Vexthul asked from his flagship far away. We are not sure, sir. Our translation computers cannot understand their language, but they do not seem to be running away or preparing to attack. Vexthul was annoyed. Every other species in the galaxy knew about Zephyrian power. They either surrendered immediately or died fighting. These new creatures seemed to not understand how things worked. Tell them to surrender now or we will destroy them, Vexthul ordered. Thexmore activated his ship's main communication system. His voice was translated into what the computers thought might be the human language. Unknown vessels, this is the Zephyrian Empire. You have entered our territory without permission. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. On the human ship, Lisa heard the message and felt cold fear run down her back. The alien voice sounded angry and threatening. Her computer translated most of the words, but the meaning was very clear. Captain, I think they want us to give up or they will attack us, she said. Jake thought quickly. He had hoped their first meeting with aliens would be peaceful, but these creatures sounded hostile and dangerous. Still, he had to try to avoid a fight. Send them another message, Jake ordered. Tell them we are explorers from a planet called Earth. We mean no harm. We just want to learn about other species and maybe become friends. Lisa sent the message, but the Zephyrian response came back quickly. It was the same demand to surrender, but this time it sounded even more angry. Engineer Amy Davis checked her instruments and looked worried. Captain, those ships are powering up very large energy weapons. I think they are getting ready to shoot at us. Jake had to make a choice. He could surrender and hope the aliens would not hurt his crew, or he could try to run away and hope his ships were fast enough. But something inside him refused to give up without knowing what these aliens really wanted. All ships, this is Captain Murphy, he said on the fleet communication channel. Prepare for possible combat. Charge all weapons and get ready to move fast. We did not come this far just to become prisoners. Weapons Officer Greg Stone had been waiting for this order. He was a former military man with short gray hair and steady hands. He had trained the human crews to work together in ways that Earth's old wars had taught them. Weapons ready, Captain, Greg reported. But sir, those alien ships are much bigger than us. Our guns might not be able to hurt them. We will find out soon enough, Jake said. The Zephyrians grew tired of waiting. Thexmore decided to fire a warning shot to show these strange creatures what they were dealing with. He ordered his gunner to shoot just in front of the lead human ship. A beam of bright blue energy shot across space. It was hotter than the center of a star. The energy blast missed the human ship by only a few hundred meters, but the heat from it made their hull glow red. The humans now understood they were in serious danger. These aliens had weapons that could kill them all in seconds, but instead of panicking, something interesting happened. The human crew started working together in ways the Zephyrians had never seen before. All ships, execute pattern Delta, Jake ordered calmly. The 12 human ships suddenly scattered in different directions, but they did not run away randomly. They moved in a careful pattern that Greg Stone had designed based on old Earth military tactics. Each ship protected the others while they all moved to new positions. The Zephyrians expected the humans to either surrender or fly away in fear. Instead, the human ships started shooting back. Their weapons were simple metal projectiles fired at very high speed. The Zephyrian computers calculated that such primitive weapons could never hurt their advanced shields. The computers were wrong. The first human projectiles hit the Zephyrian shields, and something unexpected happened. Instead of bouncing off or melting like energy weapons would, the heavy metal slugs punched right through the energy barriers. They were moving so fast and were so dense that the shields could not stop them. 3 Zephyrian ships suddenly had holes in their hulls. Alarms started ringing as air rushed out into space. For the first time in centuries, Zephyrian ships had been damaged by an enemy attack. Impossible, Thexmore shouted. How did their primitive weapons get through our shields? His science officer checked the data quickly. Sir, their projectiles are using pure kinetic energy. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons and plasma blasts. These metal slugs are too simple and too fast for our defenses. The human ships continued their strange attack pattern. They did not try to destroy the Zephyrian ships completely. Instead, they aimed for specific parts like weapons and engines. Amy Davis had analyzed the alien ship designs and found weak spots that the Zephyrians did not know they had. More importantly, the humans were fighting as a team. Each ship covered the others. When one ship was in danger, 2 others would move to protect it. They shared information instantly and changed their tactics whenever the Zephyrians tried something new. The Zephyrians had always fought by using overwhelming power to crush their enemies quickly. They were not prepared for an enemy that fought smart instead of hard. Their big ships were powerful but slow to change direction. The small human ships danced around them like insects around giants. After 10 minutes of fighting, Jake made a decision that surprised everyone. All ships prepare to jump to light speed. We are leaving now. But Captain, we are winning, Greg said. Their ships are damaged, and they cannot hit us. We learned what we needed to know, Jake replied. Now we need to get home and tell Earth what we found. These aliens are dangerous, but they can be beaten. We just proved that. The human ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Zephyrians alone with their damaged vessels and their shocked minds. For the first time in 3,000 years, The galaxy's strongest military force had been hurt by an enemy and lived to tell about it. Thexmore stared at the empty space where the human ships had been. He knew he had to report this to Commander Vexthul, but he was not sure how to explain what had just happened. How could he tell his commander that 12 tiny ships with primitive weapons had damaged 6 Zephyrian warships and then escaped without losing a single vessel? The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the biggest weapons are not the most dangerous ones. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The story seemed impossible to believe. A small group of unknown ships had fought 6 Zephyrian warships and escaped without any losses. Most species thought it was just a wild rumor. Dr. Calandra was different from the others. She was a scientist from the Meridian people, a species that the Zephyrians had conquered 50 years ago. Her people were now slaves, forced to work in mines and factories. But Calandra had managed to keep her research equipment hidden. She studied the battle recordings that Zephyrian scouts had transmitted. Her blue eyes grew wide as she watched the small human ships move in perfect coordination. They did not fight like any species she had ever seen before. "They are not using better weapons," she whispered to herself in her hidden laboratory. "They are using better thinking." Calandra had spent years studying military tactics from across the galaxy. Every species fought the same way against the Zephyrians. They tried to build bigger guns and stronger shields. They always failed because the Zephyrians had the biggest guns and the strongest shields in the galaxy. But these humans were doing something completely different. They were not trying to match Zephyrian power. Instead, they were using speed, teamwork, and intelligence to fight in ways the Zephyrians could not handle. On Earth, Admiral Pete Collins sat in a meeting room with the planet's top military leaders. Captain Jake Murphy had returned with his report, and everyone was trying to understand what it meant. "The aliens have technology that is hundreds of years ahead of ours," Jake explained. "Their ships are massive and their weapons can destroy entire cities. But they have one big weakness." "What weakness?" asked Admiral Collins. He was an old man with gray hair who had spent his whole life preparing for war. "They fight like they have never lost a battle," Jake said. "They use the same tactics every time. Overwhelming force in straight lines. No creativity, no adaptation. They have been winning for so long that they forgot how to think." Colonel Nancy Beck was taking notes, quickly. She was a strategic analyst with short blonde hair and sharp green eyes. Her job was to find ways to win battles that seemed impossible to win. "So you think we can beat them?" she asked. "I think we can survive them," Jake corrected. "And if we can survive them long enough, maybe we can teach other species to fight back too." The Earth military began working day and night to prepare for the Zephyrian response. Engineer Tony Wright led a team that designed new weapons based on what they had learned from the first battle. Instead of trying to copy alien energy weapons, they focused on making their kinetic projectiles even more effective. "The aliens expect energy weapons," Tony explained to his team. "Their shields are designed to stop plasma and laser beams, but they cannot stop a piece of metal moving at 20% of light speed." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Commander Vexthul was dealing with his own problems. The report from Scout Captain Thexmore had reached the Zephyrian High Command. They were not happy. "Explain to me how 6 of our warships were damaged by 12 primitive vessels," demanded High Commander Zekthar. He was the supreme leader of all Zephyrian military forces. His voice could make even the bravest warriors shake with fear. "Sir, the enemy used tactics we have never encountered before," Vexthul replied carefully. "They did not fight according to any known military doctrine. Are you telling me that savages with metal projectiles outsmarted the greatest military minds in the galaxy?" Vexthul did not want to answer that question directly. "Sir, we recommend increasing patrols to find and destroy these humans before they can cause more trouble." Zekthar agreed and ordered more ships to hunt for the human vessels. But the humans were already one step ahead. They had split their small fleet into even smaller groups. Each group had only 2 or 3 ships. They moved through Zephyrian space like ghosts, always appearing where they were not expected. Captain Lisa Chang was now commanding one of these small groups. Her job was to gather intelligence about Zephyrian military bases and patrol routes. She was very good at hiding her ships and avoiding detection. "We need to understand how their whole empire works," she explained to her crew. "If we can map their patrol patterns and communication systems, we can help other species fight back." The humans soon discovered that the galaxy was full of conquered peoples who hated the Zephyrians. Most of these species had given up hope of ever being free. But when they heard about the humans fighting back and surviving, something changed. On a mining world called Kepler Prime, the small blue aliens who worked in the tunnels began whispering about the new species that could hurt Zephyrian ships. The tall, thin creatures from the Vega system started meeting in secret to discuss the possibility of rebellion. Dr. Calandra managed to make contact with one of the human scout ships. She sent them a message using an old communication frequency that the Zephyrians no longer monitored. "My name is Dr. Calandra of the Meridian people," her message said. "I have information about Zephyrian weaknesses that might help you. Please respond if you receive this." Captain Murphy himself answered her call. The conversation that followed changed everything. "Dr. Calandra, this is Captain Jake Murphy of the Human Exploration Fleet. We would very much like to hear what you know about our enemies." "Captain Murphy, I have studied the recordings of your battle. You discovered something that no one else has figured out in 3,000 years. The Zephyrians are powerful, but they are not smart. They have become lazy, because they always win." Jake was excited to find an ally who understood their situation. "What can you tell us about their military structure?" "They have millions of ships, but they all follow the same basic design. They have thousands of bases, but they are all defended the same way. If you can find a weakness in one ship or one base, that same weakness exists everywhere." Over the following weeks, humans and other species began working together in secret. The humans shared their tactical knowledge while the aliens provided information about Zephyrian technology and base locations. Engineer Amy Davis worked with alien scientists to develop new weapons that combined human creativity with alien technical knowledge. They created electronic warfare devices that could confuse Zephyrian computers. They designed small drones that could hide inside Zephyrian ships and cause problems from within. More importantly, they developed a new way of thinking about warfare. Instead of trying to destroy the Zephyrian Empire through direct confrontation, they would weaken it slowly by helping enslaved species fight for their freedom. The Zephyrians began noticing problems throughout their territory. Supply convoys started disappearing. Communication networks suffered mysterious failures. Patrol ships reported strange malfunctions that their technicians could not explain. High Commander Zekthar grew increasingly angry as these incidents multiplied. "Find these humans and destroy them all," he ordered his commanders. "I do not care how many ships it takes." But the humans were no longer just 12 ships exploring space. They had become the center of a growing resistance movement that included dozens of species across hundreds of worlds. Each new species brought different skills and knowledge to the fight. The rebellion was not using Zephyrian tactics of overwhelming force. Instead, they were using human tactics of intelligence, cooperation, and adaptation. They struck quickly and then disappeared. They shared information instantly across vast distances. They learned from every encounter and constantly improved their methods. The galaxy's strongest military force was beginning to discover that strength alone was not enough to win every war. Sometimes the smartest fighter wins instead of the strongest one. The Zephyrians were about to learn this lesson the hard way. The tide was starting to turn, and the empire that had ruled through fear for 3 millennia was beginning to feel something they had never experienced before: uncertainty about their ability to win. High Commander Zekthar assembled the largest military force in galactic history, above the Zephyrian homeworld. Over 10,000 warships filled the space around their capital planet, like a metal storm cloud. Every available vessel from across their empire had been called to join the Grand Fleet. "Today we end this rebellion once and for all," Zekthar announced to his commanders. "We will travel to the human home system and destroy every ship, every station, and every world that has supported these insects. When we are finished, the galaxy will remember why the Zephyrian Empire rules supreme." The massive fleet began its journey toward Earth. Each ship was larger and more powerful than anything the humans had ever built. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their shields had never been penetrated by conventional attacks. No force in galactic history had ever assembled such overwhelming firepower. But Admiral Pete Collins was not planning to fight a conventional battle. He waited near Earth with only 300 ships from various allied species. His fleet looked tiny compared to the approaching Zephyrian armada. Every military expert in the galaxy expected the humans and their allies to be completely destroyed within hours. "Admiral, the Zephyrian Grand Fleet has arrived at the edge of our solar system," reported Captain Sam Torres from his sensor station. He was a young officer with dark hair who had learned to stay calm under extreme pressure. "How many ships?" Admiral Collins asked. "Over 10,000, sir. They are moving toward Earth in a standard attack formation." Admiral Collins nodded. The Zephyrians were doing exactly what he had expected them to do. After 3,000 years of easy victories, they had forgotten how to think creatively about warfare. "All ships, execute Operation Daedalus," he commanded. The human fleet did not retreat or try to form a defensive line. Instead, they scattered throughout the solar system in a pattern that seemed random, but was actually very carefully planned. Some ships hid behind asteroids. Others positioned themselves near the outer planets. A few even dove close to the sun, where sensors had trouble tracking them. Zekthar watched the enemy fleet disperse and felt satisfied. "They are running in panic," he told his officers. "Pursue them and destroy them one by one. This will be over quickly." The Grand Fleet spread, out to chase the scattered human vessels. This was exactly what Admiral Collins wanted them to do. The moment the Zephyrian ships separated, they lost their greatest advantage: concentrated firepower. The first surprise came when Zephyrian pursuit ships followed human vessels into the asteroid belt. Lieutenant Rachel Williams had spent weeks planting explosive charges and sensor jammers throughout the rocky debris field. When the enemy ships entered the belt, they found themselves surrounded by thousands of hidden weapons. "Detonate all charges in sectors 7 through 15, Rachel ordered from her command ship hidden deep within the asteroids. Explosions erupted throughout the asteroid belt as chunks of rock became guided missiles aimed at Zephyrian hulls. The enemy shields could stop energy weapons, but they had trouble with irregular-shaped objects moving at unpredictable speeds. 12 Zephyrian ships were disabled before they realized they had flown into a trap. But this was only the beginning. The second surprise came near Jupiter, where Captain Torres had positioned his squadron in the planet's magnetic field. The powerful electromagnetic environment interfered with Zephyrian sensors and communications. When enemy ships tried to follow the humans into this area, they found their electronic systems malfunctioning. "Now!" Torres shouted to his gunners. Human ships emerged from behind Jupiter's moons and opened fire with weapons that the Zephyrians had never seen before. These new guns fired projectiles that were guided by artificial intelligence and could change direction during flight. The smart bullets chased Zephyrian ships around obstacles and through evasive maneuvers. The third surprise was the biggest one of all. Admiral Collins had not told the Zephyrians about his secret weapon, the other species that were hiding throughout the solar system. Dr. Kellandra emerged from behind Earth's moon with a fleet of Meridian science vessels that had been modified, with human weapons. The small blue aliens from Kepler Prime appeared from the outer asteroid belt, with ships designed for stealth attacks. The tall, thin creatures from Vega materialized near Mars with vessels equipped with advanced electronic warfare systems. "All Allied forces begin coordinated assault," Admiral Collins transmitted to the combined fleet. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. Instead of two large fleets smashing into each other, it was a three-dimensional chess, game played across an entire solar system. Every planet, moon, and asteroid became part of the battlefield. The humans and their allies used tactics that the Zephyrians could not understand or counter. Small groups of ships would appear, strike specific targets, and then vanish before reinforcements could arrive. Electronic warfare specialists jammed communications between Zephyrian units. Boarding parties captured enemy vessels and turned their weapons against their former comrades. Zekthar watched his mighty fleet being torn apart by an enemy that refused to fight according to established rules. "This is madness," he shouted at his tactical officers. Why cannot we hit them? Sir, they are not fighting like any known military force, his chief strategist replied. Every ship seems to be acting independently, but they are all working together somehow. We cannot predict what they will do next because they constantly change their tactics. The Zephyrian commander tried to rally his forces by moving his flagship toward Earth itself. If he could threaten the human homeworld directly, perhaps the enemy would be forced to engage him in traditional battle. But Admiral Collins had anticipated this move. As the Zephyrian flagship approached Earth, it found itself surrounded by the planet's entire defensive network. Thousands of orbital weapons platforms opened fire simultaneously, while human ships attacked from every direction. The flagship's shields began to fail under the coordinated assault. For the first time in his military career, Zekthar felt the cold touch of fear. All ships, retreat to the outer system and regroup, he ordered. But it was too late. The Zephyrian fleet had been divided and confused by human tactics. Many ships could not receive the retreat order because their communications had been disrupted. Others found themselves surrounded by enemy forces and unable to escape. The battle that was supposed to end the human rebellion in a few hours stretched on for 3 days. With each passing hour, more Zephyrian ships were captured or destroyed while the Allied forces seemed to grow stronger. On the third day, something unprecedented happened. Zekthar's own flagship was boarded by a team led by Captain Jake Murphy himself. The human commander walked onto the Zephyrian bridge accompanied by officers from 6 different species. "Hi, Commander Zekthar," Jake said calmly. "I am offering you the chance to surrender with honor. Your fleet is defeated. Your empire is crumbling, but your people do not have to die." Zekthar looked around his damaged bridge. Half of his crew was wounded or dead. His mighty flagship was crippled and surrounded by enemy vessels. The reports coming in from across the galaxy told of rebellions breaking out on dozens of worlds. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had ruled through strength and fear. But strength alone was not enough when faced with an enemy that fought with intelligence and cooperation. "I surrender," Zekthar said quietly. The words felt strange in his mouth because no Zephyrian commander had ever spoken them before. The formal ceremony took place on Earth a week later. Representatives from over 100 species gathered to witness the signing of the Galactic Peace Accord. The Zephyrian Empire agreed to release all conquered peoples and to join the new alliance as an equal member, rather than a ruling power. Admiral Collins stood before the assembled delegates as the first leader of the new Galactic Alliance. "Today, we have proven that the strongest force in the universe is not the biggest weapon or the most powerful fleet," he said. "The strongest force is intelligent beings working together toward a common goal." Captain Jake Murphy, now promoted to Admiral, looked out at the stars from the bridge of his new flagship, Terra's Hope. The ship was built using technology from dozens of different species, all working together to create something better than any one culture could achieve alone. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Military might could conquer worlds and enslave populations, but it could not defeat the power of minds working together. The Zephyrians had been the strongest fighters in galactic history, but the humans and their allies had proven that being smart was better than being strong. The age of galactic empires built on fear and domination was over. In its place rose a new era of cooperation, exploration, and shared knowledge. The species that had once trembled before Zephyrian power now worked together as equals to build a better future for all. And at the center of it all were the humans from a small blue planet, who had shown the galaxy that sometimes the most powerful weapon is simply the willingness to think differently about old problems. The strongest had indeed fallen to those who fought with their minds instead of just their muscles. 6 months had passed since the first battle between humans and Zephyrians. What had started as a small exploration mission from Earth had grown into something much bigger. The human tactics had spread throughout the galaxy like a disease that the Zephyrians could not cure. Captain Lisa Chang now commanded a mixed fleet of 40 ships from 12 different species. Her flagship was still a human vessel, but half of her fleet consisted of alien ships that had been modified with human technology and tactics. Today we take back Kepler Station, Lisa announced to her diverse crew. This will be our first major victory against a heavily defended Zephyrian stronghold. Kepler Station was a massive space fortress that controlled shipping routes through 3 star systems. It was protected by over 200 Zephyrian warships and had never been successfully attacked in its 500-year history. The traditional way to attack such a fortress would be to bring an even larger fleet and try to overwhelm its defenses through superior firepower. This approach had failed every time it was tried. The Zephyrians always had more ships and bigger guns than anyone else. But Lisa was not planning a traditional attack. All ships execute Plan Shadow, she ordered. Instead of approaching the station directly, the mixed fleet scattered into dozens of small groups. Each group contained ships from different species with different capabilities. The small blue aliens from Kepler Prime had ships that were very good at hiding. The tall, thin creatures from Vega had vessels that could jam enemy communications. Human ships provided coordination and tactical leadership. Commander Vexthul was defending Kepler Station with his usual strategy. He placed his largest ships in a protective ring around the fortress. His patrol ships moved in predictable patterns that had worked perfectly for centuries. His confidence was complete. "Sir, we are detecting some unusual energy readings at the edge of our sensor range," reported his tactical officer. "Probably just background radiation from the nearby star," Vexthul replied without much interest. "Maintain standard defensive positions." But the energy readings were not from a star. They were from 30 small ships that had used cloaking technology to get close to the station without being detected. The ships were positioned all around the fortress in a 3-dimensional pattern that the Zephyrians had never seen before. At exactly the same moment, all 30 ships dropped their cloaking devices and opened fire. But they were not trying to destroy the station. Instead, they were targeting very specific systems that Dr. Kel-Andra had identified as critical weaknesses. The first targets were the communication arrays that allowed the station to coordinate with its defending fleet. Strange new weapons that combined human electromagnetic pulse technology with alien particle beams fried the electronic systems in seconds. The second targets were the sensor networks that let the station track enemy movements. Swarms of tiny drones, each no bigger than a human hand, attached themselves to the sensor dishes and began transmitting false information. The third targets were the shield generators that protected the station from attack. Instead of trying to overload them with massive firepower, the attackers used precisely calculated strikes to create resonance failures that made the shields collapse from within. Within 5 minutes, Kepler Station was blind, deaf, and defenseless. But the Zephyrian fleet was still intact and very angry. "All ships attack the enemy vessels immediately," Vexthul ordered. But his communications were being jammed by the alien ships. Only half of his fleet received the order. The ships that did receive the order tried to follow standard Zephyrian tactics. They formed up in battle lines and prepared to advance on the enemy positions. This is exactly what Lisa had expected them to do. "All units, begin Phase 2, she transmitted to her scattered forces. The mixed fleet did not try to fight the Zephyrian ships directly. Instead, they used the confusion and communication breakdown to their advantage. Small groups of ships appeared and disappeared around the massive Zephyrian vessels, striking quickly and then vanishing before return fire could be organized. The humans had taught their alien allies something that no military academy in the galaxy had ever considered: how to fight as individuals while still working as a team. Each ship captain was free to make decisions based on what they saw in front of them, but they all worked toward the same overall goal. Lieutenant Kevin Brooks led a boarding party of humans and aliens onto one of the damaged Zephyrian ships. Instead of trying to fight their way to the bridge through heavily defended corridors, they used ventilation systems and maintenance tunnels to reach critical areas. "Remember, we are not here to kill everyone," Kevin told his team as they moved through the alien ship. "We want to capture their officers and steal their computer files." The Zephyrians had never faced boarding parties that used stealth and intelligence instead of brute force. Their defenses were designed to stop frontal assaults by heavily armed soldiers. They were not prepared for small teams that moved like shadows and struck without warning. Within an hour, Kevin's team had captured the ship's command center and downloaded its navigation computers. The information they gathered would help the Resistance plan attacks on other Zephyrian facilities. Similar boarding actions were taking place on ships throughout the battle zone. The mixed fleet was not trying to destroy the Zephyrian vessels. Instead, they were capturing them and turning their own weapons against the remaining defenders. Admiral Susan Kelly arrived with reinforcements just as the battle was reaching its peak. She was commanding a human battle group that had been modified, with the best technology from 6 different alien species. Her ships looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. "Admiral Kelly to all Resistance forces," she transmitted. "We are beginning the final phase of the operation." The final phase was something that the Zephyrians could not have imagined in their worst nightmares. Instead of trying to hold Kepler Station, the Resistance forces began taking it apart piece by piece. Teams of engineers from multiple species worked together to remove the station's most advanced technology. Weapon systems were carefully disconnected and loaded onto transport ships. Computer cores were extracted and their data copied. Even the station's power generators were dismantled and prepared for removal. The Zephyrians watched in horror as their fortress was systematically stripped of everything valuable. They tried to stop the process, but their remaining ships were outnumbered and outmaneuvered by Resistance forces that seemed to be everywhere at once. "This is impossible," Vexthul said as he watched his command center's main screen. "How can primitive species be doing this to us?" His science officer had been studying the enemy tactics throughout the battle. "Sir, they are not fighting like any known military doctrine. Each ship acts independently, but they all support each other. It is like fighting a swarm of insects that can think." The battle ended not with a massive explosion, but with the Resistance forces simply leaving. They had accomplished their mission completely. Kepler Station was now an empty shell floating in space. Its defenders were either captured or stranded without communications or supplies. More importantly, the Resistance had captured enough Zephyrian technology to equip dozens of new ships. They had also demonstrated to the entire galaxy that the mighty Zephyrian Empire could be defeated by coordinated action and smart tactics. Within days, rebellions began breaking out on Zephyrian-controlled worlds throughout the galaxy. The enslaved species had seen proof that their oppressors could be beaten. Hope had returned to places where it had been dead for centuries. High Commander Zekthar received the report of Kepler Station's fall with rage and disbelief. In 6 months, these humans had turned his invincible empire into something that could be challenged by former slaves and primitive species. "Gather every available ship," he ordered his commanders. "We will end this rebellion with one final decisive battle. Prepare the Grand Fleet for departure to the human home system." The Zephyrians were planning to use their ultimate weapon, overwhelming numbers. They would bring so many ships to Earth that no amount of clever tactics could save the humans. But they did not understand that the humans were no longer fighting alone. Species from across the galaxy were preparing to join the final battle, and they were all using tactics that the Zephyrians had never learned how to counter.